Call to order the meeting of the Verona Planning Commission for Thursday, November 3rd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. We will begin with the roll.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Mayor Diaz.
Here.
Alderperson Posey.
Here.
And Commissioner Hankard.
Here.
All right, that is a quorum. Next, we'll move on to item 3, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Hi, my name is Sarah Schmid. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Sarah Schmid, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my parents, Ray and Shirley Maurer. My family owns the land west of Shady Oak Lane. I manage Verona Meadows Golf Driving Range. This year was our 31st year since my mom started it. The cropland next to the driving range we lease out. Our parcel is 38 acres. My parents have the farm on Highway PD across from the driving range. We are very concerned about the water runoff. On occasions, we have had flooding through our valley at the driving range. The fields, cropland, where the development is proposed, usually absorb runoff. We are very concerned with the surface amount of roofs and parking lots. Even if the development has 3 retaining ponds in place, the overflow will definitely affect the driving range as well as our cropland. We urge you to consider this while the planning process is going on. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We are still in public comment, so if anyone else wishes to speak.
Good evening. I'm Joe Tucker. I live on Shady Oak Lane. Can I share a handout?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that okay? I'm basically here to ask questions about the Hexagon development, which I think is item 6 on your agenda. And I'm hoping that maybe you can obtain answers to those questions when that discussion comes up. First thing I want to do is ask you to look at the 2 photos on the back of the page. So, does everybody have something they can look at? Because I could walk up and, okay. So, the top picture is your Northwest Neighborhood Plan from 2018. The bottom picture is my guess at how the Northwest Neighborhood Plan is actually shaping up, and I'll tell you what the differences are. First, I'm going to issue a disclaimer. I'm not speaking for any property owners except for me and my husband, but I've talked to a lot of people and been to a lot of public meetings in the last few years, and we're hearing some things from people in this area that I think you should be aware of. So on the bottom picture, the purple area at the western end of the Northwest neighborhood is farmland that I believe the owners want to preserve as farmland. They've said so. I think they're proceeding in that direction. I think they don't intend to sell for development, and they've said as much in public meetings. In the middle, you have the Marty property, which is the yellow, and we know that's kind of in the works. North of the Marty property, you have this trapezoid, north of Shady Oak Lane. That's individual private lots, including ours, and I don't think anybody has an intention of selling. They're pretty happy where they are. They don't want their land developed, and they don't really feel like they're a part of the Northwest Neighborhood Plan. Over on the far east, you have the the purple rectangle, which is the former Dykeman and Cowling properties. So as we all know, those are now in the public domain and open space and parkland, and that's great. I have 2 colored in aqua here. One is the 2 residential properties. Oh, I'm sorry, there's another purple property which used to be known as the Heath parcel, which has a City of Madison deed restriction on it, so it can't be developed, so that takes another piece out that isn't available for development. North of the Heath parcel is I don't know, maybe 40, maybe 60-some acres in 2 separate individually owned lots. I don't know what those people intend or want to do. I'm not, they could want to develop, they may not. There are nice houses on those lots. Don't know why they'd want to develop, but who knows. And then down here you have, you have the parcel that contains the driving range. And again, I'm not speaking for anybody, but, I guess my point is, out of the original Northwest Neighborhood Plan, already a whole bunch of it has been carved away. And so there's not that much left to work with or to expand into, which leads me, or I think there will not be that much left to expand into, which leads me to my questions. So the first question is, this apartment development is pretty high density. Is that appropriate for this site? It's a rural area. It's on the outer edge of the future city limit. It has large rural lots adjacent to it, and it's part of the Ice Age Trail scenic view. There are no services nearby. So does that development really fit this area? Second question is, does it fit in view of how the Northwest Neighborhood Plan has become smaller since the 2018 Comp Plan amendment? It seems the future development areas envisioned by the city in 2018 are shrinking fast, and one wonders if encouraging the Hexagon project is cost-effective for the taxpayers. The third question is, I'm finding the traffic planning difficult to make sense of. I don't see how rerouting Shady Oak Lane is helpful or needed, and at least one of the western access roads depicts a connection through the golf driving range, which seems a bit pie in the sky. Fourth question is, what methods would be used to protect surrounding property from sound, light pollution, and heavy traffic? Fifth question is, do you have any viewshed information showing what people at the Ice Age Trail scenic overlook would see? The current plan for the Cowling property shows a nice scenic overlook on the sort of the southwestern corner of that square, looking out over the glacial outwash valley. What are they going to see? Are they going to see this apartment complex? It seems like they would. So is that what we really want? And then the last question is, why is there a commercial or retail parcel included, and what is intended with that? So I thank you for hearing these. I'm hoping that maybe you'll ask some of the same questions in the discussion later on, and then we'll know the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still in the public comment portion, so if anyone else from the public wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so. Seeing no one else approaching the microphone, we'll move on to item 4, which is approval of minutes from the October 3rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Questions, comments, or motions to approve? Alder Posey.
Move approval of the minutes.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Powers. Last chance for corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the October 3rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 5, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a certified survey map review to create one lot and one outlot located at 1403 Northern Lights Road. Mr. Sayre.
All right, thank you. The proposed CSM would create one lot and one outlot along Northern Lights Trail. The intent of this outlot is for a sign. The outlot would be transferred to Good Shepherd Church. That was an agreement that went to the Common Council at the previous meeting. The intent, there would be a sign installed on outlot 1, and then ultimately another access point to the church would be provided from currently the drive to the pit in that area. As part of that transfer of the land, we're required to do a CSM, which has created this outlot in the lot. Staff recommends approval of the certified survey map to create one lot and one outlot at 1403 Northern Lights Road.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
I'd like to make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend common council approval of the certified survey map, creating one lot and one outlot at 1403 Northern Lights Road.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Powers. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the certified survey map to create one lot and one outlot located at 1403 Northern Lights Road signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we will move on to a discussion and possible action regarding the initial review to construct 656 multifamily units and one commercial lot located north of County Highway PD and east of Shady Oak Lane and west of Woods Road. This is item 6. Mr. Sayer. It's my understanding the applicant has a presentation. A short one, I hope.
Good evening, Mark Lake from Wongard Partners. I'm here with President and COO Matt Maroney and our Vice President of Construction, Bob Brandherm, and then our planner, Nick Protera from Tesca Associates. Wongard Partners is, we're multifaceted developers. We do multifamily, we do industrial, and this presentation shows a little bit about what we do. We own property here in Dane County at what's it called? Sorry, Glacier Valley, and then we own a bunch of them in Oconomowoc, in Mount Pleasant, and in Milwaukee and Wauwatosa. And I think the one thing that we want to stress more than anything, and if you see the presentation, is how important we treat our tenants, and we property manage the sites ourselves, and we value our reputation scores as how our tenants look at how we take care of our properties, and we have some of the highest reputation scores in the state. And so that's really, it shows you a bunch of our properties. And do you have the site or? Thank you. On the screen, you see that a plan for what's called a hexagon parcel. Hexagon is one of our partners. They own the land, and we're proposing to a project that meets the requirements of the master plan as it was updated, which shows that this area could be a mixed-use development, and then yes, it would include a small piece of commercial. We are, that size of commercial, we have no idea what it should be or what could be there. I think the important thing is to look at the buildings and what we could present. We're looking at stack flats, which are individual entrance buildings. Several of them will have a garage inboard. Several of them will have garages in a garage, a common garage. There's townhomes, which will have two-car garages, and then there's podium buildings, which will have underground garages. Our plan would include a large 10-plus acre preservation, if you will, of the northern slope, which is where the Ice Age Trail is, and that's the green space on the east side. And then we would have a lot of stormwater ponds that deal with the stormwater requirements of the city and the county, and CARPC as it relates to how much water and the preservation of the stormwater. So as it would go into Badger Mill Creek, we meet the requirements, which are stricter than most other communities that we've ever had to deal with. We have a limited commercial. Would we develop it? Not sure. But part of the plan, I guess, would be to figure out what the city actually wants in terms of commercial, and then we would adjust our plan to meet that. The drawing in and of itself shows what we could do, and I think we'll have to certainly work with the community on what we should do. And so if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sayer.
Well, thank you. Once again, this is an initial review for a proposed development that would provide 656 multifamily units in one commercial lot located along County Highway PD and east of Shady Oak Lane and west of Woods Road. The property in question is highlighted on your screen in yellow before you. This project has a variety of steps that would have to go through. This property is currently in the town. It would require a pre-development review agreement, annexation, an urban service area amendment. So it would require kind of the full scale of approvals and to kind of get something going on this property. So this is the first step where they come in, they provide a kind of a presentation. The intent here tonight is to provide them feedback. There is no action by the Plan Commission, and this ultimately then ends up at the Common Council meeting on November 14th for the same type of process, once again, to provide feedback and also to kind of share thoughts on the project itself. This is part of our Northwest Neighborhood Plan. The plan, which was adopted in 2018, is before you here. The property in question, once again, is highlighted in that white color on the screen before you. That plan identified this property as a commercial mixed-use area. It does provide for a variety of uses in there, including residential and commercial components as well. So this is the plan that was adopted for the area. The project itself, which we just showed a few minutes ago, I think Mark kind of highlighted a few areas, but once again, on the east here along Woods Road, you have the open space. You have the Terminal Moraine that's located in this kind of the wooded green space area. You have some townhomes along County Highway PD. You've got some 3 or 4 story apartment buildings, which would be kind of north of that. Northern Lights, as part of this project, would be extended up to the Heath property line that was kind of mentioned in the public comments. There is a deed restriction on that property from the city of Madison that goes back many years. In essence, what that deed restriction says is the Heath property can't have any buildings or development on it. That's the short of kind of how that deed restriction has been worded, and that was imposed by the city of Madison. So that restriction will remain unless Madison decides to release that restriction. On the west side of Northern Lights, we have the 2 flats that Mark had mentioned. We've got some renderings of those in a second as well. And then also on here too, which is kind of, I guess, a little bit different from what you normally would see, there is this kind of right-of-way dedication for a potential tunnel. This tunnel concept has been talked about now for 6-7 years, just from the traffic standpoint of kind of the traffic that goes to the Epic campus. I think at this time, there isn't an intent to build that tunnel immediately, but we're looking at trying to set that land aside in case that tunnel is needed at some point in the future. So the developer has placed that in their plan as kind of a placeholder of something that may need to occur here in the future. The townhomes is some renderings that were included in the packet. Once again, these are just 2-story townhomes with attached with garages in the back. We also have the stack flats as well with detached garages. The applicant has provided renderings that show potential solar panels that would be located on top of those as well. The architecture they have is once again just prairie style, pretty consistent with other projects that we've seen in the area. So once again, we're discussing this tonight. In the packet also, we did include for reference purposes just other residential development projects that we have occurring in the city. Happy to answer any questions about those as well. In general, staff is open to development on this property. I know the applicant and staff have had some back and forth just on how much commercial should be on the site. I think the initial conversations, there's more commercial. Now it's been scaled back as well. We'd like to continue to have conversations on that of just what that appropriate mix should be. So that's one of the items that, as we go forward, staff will be discussing with the applicant. Some kind of pointed questions that staff would kind of like some feedback on from the Plan Commission regarding this project, since it is just the initial review. One, do you support multifamily on this property? Second, do you support the diversity of housing options? That includes the stack flats. Once again, the stack flats are kind of on the west side of the site. You have the townhomes as well, and then you have your typical kind of 3 to 4 story apartment buildings. And then also, this kind of just some comments and questions just on the commercial as well. What's any feedback on the commercial area? And we do have the Marty property, which is in the process of development process west of here. This piece, part of the reason it was identified as commercial just because of kind of the location of it with traffic flows, and just also this is kind of the commercial node until you get further east towards M and PD. So the intent of it was to provide some commercial in this area for the residents that would be living here. So it's pretty high level. I'd be happy to answer any questions though from the Plan Commission.
Thanks. I'll call on myself first while people think of questions or comments. I guess in regards to the questions in the packet, I would say, number one, do I support multifamily as property? Yes. I think we're going to see, I think this is going to be a national trend. It's been a national trend to see a lot of multifamily development. I think with the actions of the Federal Reserve, we're going to see even more. Single-family home construction is already slowing down in response to rising interest rates, and multifamily is not. So I think, you know, if you want homes for people and you want to keep housing prices vaguely reasonable, this is what the future developments are going to look like, at least for the near future. For two, enthusiastic, yes, I support a diversity of housing options. I don't think I would support a development that was purely all one thing. Although I do really like townhomes, and I if there could be a few more squeezed in, I think I would appreciate that. Regarding the detached garages, I really like the 1-to-1 ratio for underground parking. I don't really like the detached garages. I think the underground parking leads to better land use, and it's better for the tenants. You know, if it was like, you know, you were off, like it was 0.9 or something, and it was real close, I could get on board with that, but it would have to be really close. And then for 4, is the commercial lot large enough for a neighborhood commercial center? I think it could be a little bit bigger, although I do want to say I would prefer if there's commercial to be part of mixed use. I think it's a more efficient use of the land. And I would just say I would not want a gas station there. I don't think that's a good use of land. I don't think it would fit into the neighborhood, and I'd prefer a business without a drive-through, because that would help keep the neighborhood walkable and bikeable. And yes, sometimes I go through drive-throughs too, but they're not compatible very well with people walking. So yeah, in general, as you can probably tell, I'm definitely open to this, and I would like to see something here. It fits in with the city plan, and like I said, we need more housing if we want to keep housing prices in Verona vaguely reasonable. That being said, like I said, the detached garage, when I look at it, that's like the main hang-up, and that issue derailed a different project somewhere else. So I think, I'm only speaking for myself, but, you know, it did derail another project with the Plan Commission and the council, so I would take staff's feedback on that seriously. A couple other quick comments. I do like the trails and the natural area. I think it looks good. I like the solar panels. Those are a good idea. EV chargers are good, and I'm sure staff has told you about the city requirements. And I think that was everything I had, other than one question about the future of Shady Oak Lane. So if this project went through, what would happen to Shady Oak Lane? Or what could happen, I guess?
Sure. So, I mean, that's something that staff, we haven't really talked much with the developer about. And that was a comment that came up from a couple staff members of just, you know, looking at that road. I mean, ultimately, if Northern Lights were able to ever to extend in the future up to Shady Oak Lane, just south of where the current curve is today, I think in a perfect world, we'd like to see, you know, the southern portion of Shady Oak abandoned. We know we can't abandon all of it just because there are some driveways on there and there's some areas we'd have to take a look at. But from our standpoint, from a strictly traffic standpoint, it would make that, from a public safety standpoint, safer. It would cut down on an additional point of conflict, especially if Northern Lights is a controlled access point. We would always try to encourage and direct traffic into traffic signals versus a T intersection. So that's a detail that, you know, staff needs to look more closely at, because we just haven't gotten to that level just because of where the project is at. But that's an item that we'll be discussing with the developer. But in a perfect world, it would ideally go away because it cuts out that point of conflict.
Gotcha. And then I guess a follow-up, there's no plans to put a road through the Mauer property, right? Like, I think something like that came up in public comment, but
The driving range west of here,
yeah.
if it's developed, I mean, there'd be a conversation
But
with
that
roads,
would be
but-
totally contingent upon the property owner.
Yeah, correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, no, it wouldn't be the city doing it, it'd be development driven.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, just because, like, if something shows up on a neighborhood plan, it doesn't mean the city has any, like, real plans to put a road there. But you heard a bunch from me. Other thoughts from the Plan Commission or questions? Commissioner Henkard and then Commissioner Wood.
Carla, water was mentioned, now it's farmland, absorbs water, we're going to put pavement and roofs. I'm sure they have to play ball with all the regulations? Do we believe that the water situation would be okay?
So we did call this out during the 2 initial reviews, just that we regulate the peak rate, but there is more volume that's generated from those impervious areas. So it's stored in the ponds, released at that same rate as it would be today, but it's released for a longer duration. So we did ask the developer to, we'd like to hear more from the engineer on how they would capture that water so that they wouldn't change the condition on that property to the west.
All right, thank you. To the questions in the packet, do I support multifamily? I think I'm with Luke on this one, that it's a trend that is hard to ignore nationally. We had a fairly high-density development in the neighborhood plan, correctly, and now it's just going from a density of commercial to a density of residential. Is that a fair characterization, Adam?
It was contemplated in the neighborhood plan, residential.
But at the very least, there was density of development it wasn't proposed to be a park or something of a very low density, and now they're going nuts. It's more of a shift from commercial perhaps to residential.
Correct.
Okay. Do I support a diversity of housing? Of course. This whole commercial thing, making it walkable. I don't think this one lot is going to make this neighborhood walkable or not by any stretch of the imagination. So I wouldn't get all bent out of shape about exactly how much commercial is in there. Ice Age Trail, I read the report. I would also favor density to preserve, and with the exchange of a preserve of land towards the Ice Age versus spreading out. The question was asked during public comment, why commercial? And I asked the same question, is this just to satisfy our regulations that say if you don't have some mixed use, you can't put in apartments? Is it driven by that, or is it driven by the city's actual desire to see commercial up there?
Well, the neighborhood plan identified it as commercial mixed use, so there was that intent of having some commercial on this property. I think as we've looked at it as staff, we recognize, especially coming out of the pandemic, that the commercial environment is definitely different than what it was even immediately before COVID. And obviously things have changed drastically. But from an overall neighborhood standpoint, if you don't have commercial here, and you have, other development happening in this area, you are going to be directing that commercial basically to MMPD. I mean, so the intent is to have more of a neighborhood type commercial where if you had to run out and get something or a service related, whether it be daycare, salon, take your pick. Something. And the intent is to try to have something there to kind of help balance this area, because otherwise there'll be nothing out there. Also, just kind of with what is going on north of here in Madison as well, just with some of the developments and what the planning that they're doing right now, they're looking at some additional housing up towards Midtown. There wasn't much commercial in that development, so we kind of see this area as potentially, and it's outside of our area, but possibly serving some of that as well too. So we do feel there's a need here. I think, as staff, we recognize though that we're trying to balance this as much as we can because of the changing commercial environment, but from a neighborhood kind of holistic standpoint, we think it's important to have something here from a commercial standpoint to help serve that neighborhood, those people out there.
I'm glad you're on the job, Adam. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. I got Commissioner Wood next.
So, I guess I'm all for apartments. Personally, I don't know if this is it. It just feels like a lot of pavement to me, and I don't really get the feeling of a neighborhood here. It just kind of, to me, quite frankly, it feels like housing just kind of thrown up. I would like to see more townhomes as well. And I saw that there were a number of 2+ bedrooms. I'm curious if there is like a playground or something for children to play at. And then I didn't see anything about workforce housing, but I'm curious if there is any, or if you guys are open to that. I don't know, maybe that's a pointed question. I'd just say, are you open to workforce housing? But yeah, I'm good with apartments. I do think if there's commercial, I would like to see it more mixed use. Because once this is built, you can't add really the commercial after the fact. So I would rather have it there than not have it there, but having housing above it, like Luke said, feels like a more efficient use of the land. Overall, I feel like this is a lot packed in here. So those are my main points.
Commissioner Powers.
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Wood. I like the concept of multifamily on the area, but it does feel dense. Thinking about the grade of the property, I'm pretty sure the tallest buildings are also on the highest part of the land, which is going to really be visible from a long ways away, which maybe they're going to be beautiful and that's fine, but it also is going to stand out quite a bit compared to the surrounding areas. It's generally, I think there's a lot of the tower feel to the back corner there, and it does feel a little bit less like a neighborhood, as Commissioner Wood said. It feels like it would be nice if there was a mix of commercial throughout on a few of those corners in the middle where people could congregate and make it feel a little bit more like a place where people gathered as opposed to just where people slept. Some of the designs of the buildings looked great. I liked the solar on the roofs, even though they were standalone garages. That I didn't mind as much, but the density seemed a little high.
Alder Posey.
I like to think and listen. So I think Commissioner Wood really you said it doesn't have the feeling of a neighborhood. And I think that's what I've been feeling and thinking since I looked at it, is I think there's an opportunity, and you're kind of touching on it with the variety of housing, which I like, and the open space that you have there and the parks that you have there, nature preserve, all that, but you're almost there, but not quite there. So I think if you could just, get in there and find out like what kind of neighborhood would you want to live in. If you live in a single family home, what kind of thing would you want to come home to right now? Because that's what we're talking about. We are Hometown USA, we are a community, and we want, even if it's multifamily housing, for people to feel like they're a part of our community. I think a big thing that I'm concerned about with adding additional multifamily housing is ownership. We're adding a lot, and we're not adding a lot of opportunity for ownership. So I'm good with, condos. Let people have that, if starter homes are starting to be condos because multifamily is the way we're going. What opportunities do we have for ownership, either in the townhomes, the stacked apartments as a condo, something so that people can be having ownership of their property, and not just having rent and feeling like they're in a transient spot, but they can actually put down roots here in our community and have long-term future in our community. I do have a little bit of concern, but I totally trust our staff would figure it out, with kind of the morning and afternoon of Northern Lights Road and PD with this intersection there. As far as the commercial, I'm not sure what would be successful there, because I think above anything, I want to make sure any commercial we're putting in isn't just a place filler, but actually has a meaning and a purpose. And I don't know if it'd be a closer, smaller grocery or, drugstore, Walgreens, or even, I know the staff mentioned daycare, and that is certainly something. I know staffing is an issue there, but maybe that might be an opportunity. So yeah, good for diversity of housing. I had not thought about the height for the high level, so I would definitely be interested to see what that view shed would look like. I know one of our public comments brought that up as far as what this would look like, and seeing some of those renderings. I know first step We don't necessarily get those right now, but that would definitely be something in the future I'd hope we would have. For the one underground and attached, I'm comfortable with the garage, as long as we are having one covered option. I would prefer, I think, to have it underground, if at all possible. I know some of our lands are getting a little bit more challenging, potentially, for digging underground garages, but, you know, Epic has 7 stories down below, not too far, so if they can do it, maybe that can be done here. And I think that covered everything.
I guess I have 2 follow-up questions, or 2 follow-up thoughts, actually. One, speaking of Epic, this kind of reminded me, I used to work there, and Epic is in title case, so it's capital E, lowercase p, lowercase I, lowercase c. It's not in all caps. That was drilled into me when I worked there, so it's triggering when I see it in all caps. So just some friendly grammar advice. And then my second comment is kind of in regards to some of the things people have said. I would say if the parking was moved from the detached garages to underground parking, that would free up space for playground equipment or community spaces or like little pocket parks for people in the neighborhood. So that has a potential to be, you know, win-win with, at least with the people's comments up here. I'm not sure how the developer feels about it, but it would potentially have the ability to make the development more community friendly. Other thoughts? Commissioner Henker.
All right. So from my years of working on environmental studies, there's often the no alternative. Like, what if we just said no? I mean, why would we? Like, what's the city's interest here? If we don't develop it, someone else will. If it doesn't get developed as this, it gets developed as something else. Because they are asking for annexation here, correct? Which gives us a little more, not, I guess, power, you could say, or decision-making capability, right? We don't have to say yes, is that correct, Adam? We do not have to say yes to someone wanting to annex into the city, is that correct?
It's correct. We've said no before to annexations and developments in areas that the Plan Commission or Council has not been interested in developing at that time. So we have said that. We've said no before. We've said no with the caveat of no, now's not the right time. Some point in the future. That's how it's gone previously.
So there was a reason. It wasn't the right proposal at the right time. There was some reason, some substantial reason.
It's always nice to have a reason. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm you know, and I'm not. Don't the developers like what's wrong with this guy? So don't fear. I'm just exploring my options. Thank you.
I mean, kind of to build on Commissioner Hankert's comments, yeah, I mean, this is the point where we have maximum leverage. So, I mean, and that's politics. And then I guess as a second thing, if you look at the Drager property where initial proposal came through, they didn't want to budge on the underground parking, and they decided to walk away from it. The people who, the Dragers came back a while later, and now it looks like the project might move forward. So, with underground parking. So, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, developers have to make choices on what they want to do and what makes financial sense. But yeah, city has a lot of flexibility.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry. So you seem to be pretty firm on this desire for one underground parking stall per unit, correct? So just out of curiosity, I mean, years ago, we thought we needed X parking stalls for commercial spaces, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, et cetera, and we overshot the mark wildly. I think that's fair to say. Just curious, do we have any feedback on where's this desire for the one coming from? Are there projects that have gone less and it's been a nightmare, or what's the genesis of the one?
Mr. Sayer and myself.
It's an ordinance requirement. So first of all, it was built into the zoning rewrite when we wrote that ordinance. That was a standard that's been put in place now for quite some time, with the intent of the belief in it creates a higher quality type project. You know, typically if you have a parking space underneath, not on the surface, it creates a better project. Second, it's better use of land. Ultimately, you're not having that parking outside on the surface, you're having that underneath, so it creates better use of the land. Part of it too is that if, and most of these will never happen, but if it was ever turned into a condo, typically that is one of the big driving forces in condos, is making sure you have at least one underground parking space. So those are kind of the factors that have gone into it over the years. But yeah, now it's actually been codified because we kept doing it over and over and over and over for all these developments that you see around town. So if you look across the street, look down West Rowan Avenue, they all have at least 1-to-1 underground. That's something that we've kind of stuck to, and you know, we do get pushback on it. We do get people that question that. We do get people that aren't too happy with that. We do have people that have extended their parking outside of the actual building area to meet that requirement. But like I said, our thought process over the years has been, it creates a better project long-term that will have better value to both the city and the people living there.
Thank you very much.
I guess if I could add one thing, the Blaine's was before my time, and I think if I had been here, it would have turned out different. Yeah, and we have changed the parking requirements to make sure they're not overparked as much.
I wasn't picking on you or Blaine's.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Question to staff, do you feel like you've gotten enough feedback from the Plan Commission?
You know, I have what I need. This will go to the Common Council on the 14th as well for a similar process.
Last chance for thoughts? All right. With that, we'll move on to item 7, which is reports and comments from the Planning Department. Mr. Sayer.
Yeah, just a couple things tonight. First of all is we have updated the development webpage online, so if you have any questions on that, I guess let me know. Any questions about any projects around town? No? Okay.
Do we have, I mean, Commissioner Hankert mentioned it, but how is the commercial continuing to go across town? Because I know there's been a lot of empty spots, but we continue to build them as part of the agreements, and a lot of these buildings being kind of multi-use with a lot of empty floors and full tops. I was curious.
Yeah, I mean, certain areas there are some struggles. There are some leases that have been signed that just spaces haven't been built out, like in Market 5. So there are some, you know, obviously there's vacancy there, but some of those spaces have been accounted for. You know, we continue to work on West Rowan Avenue with Ford Developments. I think they're going to be possibly moving their actual offices into that space as well. Commercial market right now just is not, it comes down to the COVID did a number on that sector. On top of the fact that now you have obviously the employment issues, and that's slowly starting to come back. But I mean, there's still carnage out there from COVID and the impact that had on the labor market, that had on just across the board in the commercial sector, especially in Dane County, for better or for worse with restrictions. I mean, it pounded, especially a lot of those restaurants. So, yeah, it's slower than anticipated. I know Steve Brown is still in the process of leasing up some of their space that's currently under construction. You know, stuff east of Costco has been kind of filling up there with what Slaby's building. Tim Neitzel's putting up that building behind where Hodgepodge is over on Keenan Court, and I think that is kind of leasing up already too. But some of that stuff on West Rowan Avenue is lagging, partially just because, you know, the rental rates are now higher too, just because construction costs are higher. So recognizing though that the environment now in commercial is not what it, like I said before, is not what it was 3-4 years ago. It's changed.
And if I could add an editorial comment, I think some landlords are choosing to leave it empty because they want to rent at a certain rate or they want a certain tenant and they're choosing to leave it empty. And it's private property. That's totally their choice. I would prefer it filled most of the time. But there's been 1 or 2 tenants that I've been glad the developers said no to. But that's their business, not mine. Mr. Sayer.
Any more questions on development? Next up is, obviously Catherine's no longer here. She is in the, oh, Mike is giving me a funny look. Oh boy, he didn't know. Catherine.
That wasn't good news.
No, it's not good news. So no, Catherine obviously is relocating to the lovely state of Florida. This time of year is lovely, in the summer it's not. But as part of that, just so the Plan Commission is aware, I will be transitioning as well as part of this. I think some of you know this, but currently I'm the city administrator. I will be transitioning back to my former role as Director of Planning and Development. The council has graciously agreed to allow me to do that. I'm looking for a better kind of work-life balance, so kind of insert whatever musical song that I'm back, whatever, Taylor Swift, whatever you're into, but you can insert that where you want, but we're in the process of recruiting a new city administrator with the intent that we'll hire someone hopefully by April, and I will be kind of filling both roles until we get that position filled, and once we hire that person, I'll transition back to being here on a monthly basis to spend time with everybody. So that's kind of what the plan is right now. Catherine potentially might be taking on some type of remote virtual role with the city, because right now to hire someone and train them would be impossible for me. So we are exploring that as well. So you may see her name pop up on some reports here in the, maybe not December, but hopefully in the near future, just helping us from a remote capacity standpoint and reviewing projects. So if you see her name, that's why. So that's all I have tonight.
All right, we are on item 8, adjournment. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Powers, is there a second? Second by Alder Posey. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 7:16 PM. Thank you, everyone.